Heaven and hell. I've always found it interesting that just about every religious system has some form of heaven and hell. Even Buddhism, depending on what culture it ran into, has had a certain type of underworld. Often hell is the underworld. Classically, mythologically, things underground tend to be the bad thing. Things up above tend to be the good thing. Not necessarily. Obviously, in Greek times, the underworld was just the underworld. It wasn't, it wasn't necessarily good or bad. In Jewish thought, these days we often find that they don't necessarily believe in a heaven or a hell, but there was a time when that was at least part of the mythology. You did have Sheol and Gehenna, and those were parts of their cosmology. But I've always wondered, why is it exactly that you don't just have a heaven? Why is that concept even necessary? I mean, if you just want to give people something wonderful, something great, why don't you just say, well, you're going to go to heaven if you do such and such and such and such? Now, obviously, I think some people will criticize certain aspects of Christianity, for instance, by saying that it's just fear. It's fear-based. Let's say more the Baptist kind of Christianity, sometimes the Catholic kind of Christianity, where there's this incredible fear of hell. Don't go to hell. Don't, stay out of hell. In Catholicism, you even have the purgatory in between, and those sorts of concepts. What's the necessity? Why do we have that? Why do we need that? In Omnism, while we may have our own thoughts on how things work, and we may have our own philosophies on how things work, it's still very important to look at all of these cosmologies, all of these belief systems, all of these ways of looking at the world and say, why is this? Why is this particular type of belief so prevalent? And what I've come to personally is that ultimately people don't do terribly well with just, we'll all go to heaven. Which is funny because my own personal belief system is far more like that. I personally tend towards, and again, this is not a belief of all Omnism. It's just my own personal belief. It's just how I personally tend to think about things. I love certain aspects of reincarnation because my version of reincarnation, the reincarnation that I very loosely believe in, is a loose concept that everybody ultimately evolves. That no matter what, you get chance after chance after chance to evolve into something better, regardless of how precisely that works. I like to remain very elastic in my own personal belief system, and I don't pin it down too much. I don't care to pin it down too much because I don't know. But even though I kind of believe that personally, I think that people in general feel cheated if they don't feel like they've earned something. Think of the way we play video games. Imagine if you were playing a video game and you couldn't die. And you just shot all the bad guys and they all just died. And you just go through bang, 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 bang. You beat the last boss, you beat the video game. You'd feel kind of cheated. Regardless of the fact that you want to win, you want to have barriers. You want to have problems to overcome. And I think to a great extent that is something that religions observe. They know it's necessary. We do have to have that. We do, well, at least we often have to have that. Like I said, my own personal cosmology isn't quite like that, but I can certainly see where for human evolution, that kind of thinking is necessary. Now, I come from a Christian background where there was no hell. There was heaven, and there was separation from God. Now, separation from God essentially was hell because we all thought, oh, we don't want to be separated from God. Essentially it was heaven or oblivion. And you didn't want oblivion, you wanted heaven. But it still came down to the same thing. It was still kind of fear-based in that respect. And when I say fear-based, I don't necessarily mean it's a bad thing. There is the one side of us that judges a belief system and says, you know, I don't like the way that works, or at least I don't like the way that works for me. But there's the other side of us, and I think this is a very important side of omnism, is when we say, okay, but why does it work that way? Why do so many people relate to that? Why does that work for so many people? After all, things that don't work within a religion don't tend to remain. And there's positive things and there's negative things, but if we don't relate to it somehow as people, if we don't relate to the concept of heaven and hell, if we don't relate to a reward system, if we don't relate to, let's say, for instance, this aspect of religion where people feel superior, which is definitely an aspect in certain religions, not all religions, not all people within those religions, but it certainly, and this certainly goes for humanism and belief systems like that. People like to think that what they believe is superior. That seems to be just across the board. What we believe is superior, it makes us better people. I'm better than you because I believe in God. I'm better than you because I don't believe in God. It's a very, very common aspect. And recognizing that is important. Why are those things that way? Very important. And so I don't dismiss those things. I may recognize them as negative, at least for me, but I don't dismiss them altogether. So this heaven and hell thing, this reward system, this I have to feel like I earned it in some way. Even when you get into the whole righteousness by faith versus righteousness by works argument in certain Christian circles, no matter what, you are sort of earning it. I mean, it's not as if people who simply accept God or Christ or the Bible or what have you, perhaps they don't have to earn it in the way that a works-based cosmology works, but they still have to earn it. You know, yes, they just have to ask Jesus Christ into their hearts, but it's not like you can just do that and then go do anything you want. You know, no matter what, we do feel an inward need to earn that. That doesn't work itself as much into omnism, it seems. But, and I think I need to make this clear, at least for myself. It's not as if there is no reward and no punishment. It's just that for, I think, a lot of us more omnis-based people, that reward and punishment tends to be internal. So even we follow that. We're, at least me personally, I tend to be a little more karmically based. I like the concept of karma. The concept that when I do something bad, it's not necessarily that I'm going to be punished in some fiery hell. It's that I'm going to punish myself. It's that when I do something negative in this universe, it is going to come back on me in one way or the other. Even if it's just me, even if it's just guilt. Even if it's just that I hurt someone and I have to live with that. That is a punishment. And for me, that's personally enough. Trust me, I can punish myself plenty. But I think that we all find that necessary to one extent or the other. So I encourage you all to look into your own belief system and figure out how that works within your belief system and figure out how it works best in your belief system. And when you look at other people and you talk to other people from their belief systems, it's really interesting to ask them about that and talk to them about that, because I think that it is very integral to all these different belief systems. Just something to think about, the human need for punishment and reward. I'm the Urban Omnist. I'll see you guys in the next one. Punishment reward. It's like you do something bad and something bad happens, like you have to watch 10 minutes of me talking. That's pretty bad, isn't it? Yeah, I can't stand it. I can't stand watching myself talk. It's painful. Really, it's painful. Punishment and reward. It's like bad stuff and good stuff. It's like good things happening to bad things, to bad people and things that goodness did when badness was goodness, and the badness of the goodness. What am I talking about? Punishment versus reward. It's that stuff that happens when you're doing, forget it. Punishment versus reward. Let's say for a moment you piss off your waitress, so she dumps your ice cream sundae on your head. Heaven, hell, karma. Who cares? Punishments and rewards. Heaven and hell. Tomorrow on Geraldo.